Well, all signs point to the Trump administration ready to overthrow the Venezuelan government. The war drums are beating loudly. Overnight, Venezuela's president says they foiled a false flag operation, a plot to plant explosives at the U.S. Embassy. And the United States, and certainly Israel, we love false flag operations. Gulf of Tonkin, USS Liberty trying to drag us into a war with Egypt. Pearl Harbor, knew about that before Pearl Harbor. So we love false flag attacks. You know why? Because they actually work. But this one was foiled. I'm sure we'll see more of them. The New York Magazine. When New York Magazine asks this question this morning, are we at war with Venezuela? They already know the answer to that. Why even bother printing the headlines? Jordan Goudreau knows all about false flags and trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government. Jordan is the Green Beret who was recruited by the Trump administration during his first term to implement a coup in Venezuela, but was sabotaged by the criminal Mike Pompeo of the CIA and Vice President Mike Pence back in 2019. He was then indicted, was our next guest, and Jordan believes he was set up and taken out by Pompeo and Mike Pence's office. And Jordan joins us now. Jordan, welcome to the show. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show.
Well, my pleasure. And your story is just haunting. Before we dive more deeply into what happened to you, it seems like we're going there again. It seems like Venezuela is not getting as much news coverage as what we're seeing in Israel or what's happening with trying to agitate against Vladimir Putin right now. But it seems like all eyes on Venezuela in terms of trying to overthrow that government. Does it sound familiar to you?
No, absolutely. It seems like a repeat of 5 years ago when I was recruited to, um, reinstitute change and fair and free elections in Venezuela by the Trump that at that point the Trump administration. So what you have to understand is that this is a very if I can speak to it, all of these different events, the Middle East right now with Gaza and Ukraine, and all of these events are correlated. Um, and this confluence of events, to include Venezuela, it's obviously pushing the world in a certain direction. I don't want to get too macro on it, so let me just speak to Venezuela. Venezuela, as you said, this is one of the best kept. This case is certainly my case is one of the best kept secrets of the last 5 years. If we look at what's happening now with the destroyer group, to include Aegis cruisers that are in the region, this happened 5 years ago, and I don't know that people remember it because COVID was going on. And I'll speak more to that piece later. When you look at it from the Monroe Doctrine standpoint, I think justify, you could certainly justify the fact that we do want to keep this hemisphere safe. That said, the auspice of, going after Venezuela and possibly a direct invasion under the auspices of it being a criminal narco country. I mean, I think the irony here is that, I think Max Blumenthal was just talking about this. Then, a couple decades ago, the Cartel de Solis was stood up by the CIA using, I think it was General Ramos at the time. And now, fast forward to, come back to 5 years ago, that was another auspice being used to, again, flip Venezuela because because of narco terrorism. And I think that the CIA, especially in my case, is directly correlated to this. Obviously, when you're bombing boats and you're J-damming, fishing boats and whatnot without a clear destination, the targeting data, I'm an old JSOC guy, so the targeting data has to be there. It has to exist. Whether it's human intelligence, signal intelligence, it should be a mix of all of those things. But I don't know that this administration has released that data. So I think it is a template of what I was trying to do. The overarching question is the CIA going to help depose something that they were helping to facilitate over the last 2 decades? Certainly, when I was tasked to do this, the commander's intent, which the president's the commander, his intent was to bring about regime change in Venezuela 5 years ago, as it is right now. The big variable back then was the CIA was doing anything they could to stop what was happening. This is evidenced by the embassy being shut down by Mike Pompeo under the auspices. Well, it's like Benghazi. We don't want another episode of Benghazi. And I launched for Benghazi. I was one of the JSOC strike forces that responded to that international threat. Venezuela is different. When you shut down an embassy, the reason you shut down an embassy is you greatly reduce the intelligence agency's ability to gain access and placement in a country. And if you're trying to flip a country, your intelligence agency needs to be able to do just that. They need to be able to gain access and placement to individuals in the leadership of the regime you're trying to flip. So when Mike Pompeo shut it down during the first Trump administration, he effectively limited, and I believe he intentionally limited, the ability for the commander's intent, the president's intent back then, to be fulfilled. Where we are now, it's a question in my mind whether the CIA is now on board with flipping Venezuela. The fact that it seems more like an invasion than it does a military-style coup would lead me to believe that it will be much the same in terms of alignment as it was back 5 years ago. Namely, the CIA and the president are not aligned. There's a great Wired article talking about 5 years ago how the CIA was dragging their feet on Venezuela, how they did not want to bring about regime change, how they did not want to fulfill the commander's intent. And it's spot on. And so I think when you fast forward now and you were looking at how things are playing out, similar to what was playing out back then, you have saber rattling to a larger degree. Obviously now we're bombing, narco boats, fishing boat, whatever they are, but it is ramped up. But this is the intent. The intention is to try to either have Maduro capitulate and leave, or make a deal, or we're just prepping for an invasion. So these are the questions.
This is fascinating. So the Trump administration, you believe, wants an invasion, but the CIA is sort of vacillating, which is really odd to me because the CIA loves regime change. Like if you look up the CIA in the dictionary, like a picture of regime change is right there next to them. That's what they love. They absolutely love that. Right. It seems like their entire mission. So why do you think that they are hesitant to not support President Trump in a regime change operation in Venezuela? I mean, again, I'm not a fan of regime changes of any country personally. I'm an American and American first, and so I want America's interests here at home secured and taken care of. I don't want us meddling in foreign governments. That's my position, so I'll just say that bluntly. But why do you think they're out of alignment on this?
Right. So you have different goals. The president's goal or the administration's goal, we can say strategically that would be Monroe Doctrine, create white space or remove white space for the Russians, Chinese, and other their ability to strategically operate in this hemisphere. The CIA,
and we certainly know, I don't mean to cut you off, but we certainly know the Chinese Russian influence right now in Latin America. It's been basically a vacuum. You're seeing ports being set up and facilitated by the Chinese. So where the United States has been really weak in that regard, it's being filled by Russia and China.
Exactly. So when I say white space, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You see resource and trade deals between South American countries, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia. And this has been happening over the last decade, I would say, but really it's starting to take shape more and more as time goes on. And so obviously with Venezuela, you have a tremendous amount of resources. You have air bases, you have naval bases that the Chinese and Russians can utilize to strike with close proximity to the United States. This is the on the surface reasoning why the Trump administration, this is what they can talk about, and to include, the flooding of drugs. This is the reasoning behind why they would move in and possibly invade Venezuela, or why they want regime change in general. I think the other reason, and this is a very pervasive reason, this is what I ran into was it's money. It's quite simply money, right? The resource-rich country of Venezuela. So it's twofold. I think that companies that are aligned with this administration are going to profit greatly from it, and this is certainly what I ran into 5 years ago. The CIA, their goal is, I mean, they stood up Cartel de Solis. They have been facilitating and working with Cartel de las Solis for the last 2 decades. And so they are making a considerable amount of money. This is evidenced by, the US AID investigation by, Doge when it was still around. And it's also evidenced by the work of Gary Webb and other journalists. So there's a great, documentary called The Last Narc. I think Tiller Russell made that, and it documents how, the CIA has been complicit in the drug trade for the last, God knows how long, probably from its inception. They're just smarter about it nowadays. So this is the kind of the dynamic.
Well, we certainly know the CIA. Exactly, you're right, spot on about that. Flooding. I mean, the CIA loves to make sure that these communities in the United States are flooded with drugs. We saw what happened in Los Angeles, in the black community, and the crack cocaine epidemic, of course. So they were tied directly to that. So they love to do this. When I see suddenly no one knew the name like Tren de Aragua like more than a year ago, and then suddenly this Venezuelan gang is all over the news. They're taking over Aurora apartment complexes in Colorado. Do you think that that's part of it? Do you think the CIA is involved in Tren de Aragua and using that as a catalyst of, in many ways, like a false flag operation to rally American support? Now we need to go. We're bombing these narco boats. It's Tren de Aragua. They're trying to come back to the United States. Therefore, we need to go into Venezuela to stop them.
Right. I absolutely think that that is a very valid argument to make. It is a false flag. It's almost like a soft false flag in that I mean, Tren de Agua is a construct, much like Cartel de Solis. That name is a construct that was created by the DEA and CIA. It's called Cartel of the Suns because on a Venezuelan uniform, there is one of their patches is a sun. And so some analyst somewhere in some room came up with that, and that was what they were called. Now, this is it's a construct of the CIA that has been placed onto these organizations. And so, yes, I do think that the Tren de Agua is just, I guess you would say that the international / tactical arm of the Cartel de las Solis, which is really just a CIA construct. Absolutely.
It's unbelievable. I mean, most Americans, we sort of walk blindly into these things. We hear these news stories. Man, Tren de Aragua has taken over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. They're coming for your kids. They're down the street from you. And to know like that the CIA is actively involved in like fomenting that fear among Americans is it's almost satanic. I mean, it's demonic what they're doing and what they've been doing to the American people. And they operate outside of the purview of the Trump administration. They operate on their own. They operate much the same way the NATO stay-behind armies of Gladio, Operation Gladio. Like they don't answer to anyone. Is that your experience?
Right. They have the op within the op. They have the agenda within the agenda. And so if you look at back when, the commander in chief 5 years ago now wanted to actually, have regime change. And I understand, listen, I understand that the democratic process is something as Americans that we believe in very deeply. That said, I think that, when you have the CIA that is undermining the president of the United States and his intent, he relies on the intelligence community to do their jobs. Whether we disagree or agree with what happens in the end, I think we can agree on the fact that they aren't just going to say no, they will find a way to pretend like they're doing something. And this is where you see these low-level style sabotage operations in Venezuela when the lights go up completely. You have, infrastructure attacks. You have targeting, much like you have the targeting of the embassy in Venezuela, in Caracas. The irony is, when you look at the reporting, I largely believe more of the reporting that Maduro is doing because it's most likely true, as opposed to the spin that's coming from the CIA, which I have myself run into. If you Google my name, it's largely one big psyop. If you, for instance, once this airs, if you look down in the comments, you will get a ton of individuals who will comment who are obviously working for entities in the Venezuelan opposition / CIA, and they will flood the entire comments with derogatory comments about me and and so on and so forth. But it is a very tricky, battle space to navigate for a Green Beret. What I will say is this: my operation that I planned 5 years ago was not in the typical vein of a CIA operation. It was a Venezuela military style coup. The heavy lifting would have been done by the access and placement of very powerful individuals who were surrounding the leadership in Venezuela. These men had task maneuver units. And so there would not have been an American face on this. This would have been done by Venezuelans. I am a Green Beret after all. I believe, JFK stood us up. I believe very strongly that people should be free. My team and I we wanted the opportunity for Venezuelans to have fair and free elections. So the planning that went into this was based on using Venezuelans to reclaim their own country and to push aside the bad actors in the Venezuelan opposition, the CIA, and the regime. We wanted Venezuela to choose their own leadership. You and I both know that if there's an invasion or military stuff, whatever CIA-initiated coup or US invasion happens, there has to be a leader that is going to come into power. These leaders will be, whoever initiates this action, these leaders will be propped up by that entity, whether it's the US government or if it's the CIA or whoever it is.
Microplastics are infiltrating every part of our body. Scientists estimate we now consume a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. Delicious. Not. It's right through our food system, even our water, even the air we breathe. One study found that plastic particles in 100% of human lung samples. So nobody is safe from exposure. It gets worse. These plastic don't just sit in your body. They cross the gut lining, leach into your blood, and disrupt everything. They've been shown to alter gut bacteria, suppress your immune response, and increase your risk of neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disorders, and cancer. Some plastic toxins, like BPA and phthalates, mimic hormones and interfere with fertility and damage DNA. Even if you eat clean or avoid packaged foods, you're still being exposed. You can't opt out, but your gut can help you fight back. Kimchi 1 from our friends at Brightcore Nutrition is a potential ally in this toxic world. It's packed with over 900 probiotic strains unique to kimchi, proven to break down BPA, helping you detox from the inside out. It doesn't just support digestion, it helps protect your cells, your brain, your hormones, and your future. Your body was never designed to handle plastic, but your gut was designed to protect you, and you have to give it the right tools. Right now, you can get 25% off if you use our code REDACTED at the link below. It's just mybrightcore.com/redacted. But an even better deal is if you call them. You call them, you'll get 50% off at 888-404-6312. And they'll also, I think, give you still that bottle of vitamin D3. You have to ask them about that. Kimchi 1 from Brightcore. Health starts in the gut. Our thanks to Brightcore for supporting our show. So your operation, as you were planning this operation, maybe you can explain who you were working with internally with the Green Berets to plan this operation, but it was at cross purposes with the CIA. So you were basically working in opposition to Mike Pompeo's CIA.
Correct. So I was recruited by the head of White House operations in the White House. He was Trump's fixer for 30 years, but he had a position in the government. When he left government, he joined an entity called Global Governments, which was a company that recruited me with this other individual, Keith Schiller. There was no bones about it. And I read the discovery all day long in the FBI 302s about there's an individual who was in the initial meeting, and we were talking about removing Maduro from office and instituting fair and free elections. Venezuela wasn't even my radar at the time. I was dealing with school shootings and trying to template and prototype a way to do away with school shootings. And so I got pulled into this by the president's inner circle. So I took it on.
Were you active duty at the time?
I was not. I was private. Now,
Okay.
to get to your point, to get to your point, Clayton, the very first meeting, there were two individuals who were Venezuelan opposition. These men were direct strategists with Leopoldo Lopez and Juan Guaido. A man named Lester Toledo and the other guy is George Betancourt. But these two individuals were CIA assets. This is evidenced by FBI 302s. This is evidenced by a secret recording that of these individuals talking about how they did not trust Donald Trump and how they only trusted the CIA and a man named Juan Cruz, who was a CIA case officer. And they were going to basically do whatever they needed to do to be on the side of the CIA. Now, I did not know this at the time, but when we fast forward to when the operation starts to become sabotaged. This is where the CIA and Venezuelan opposition and Colombian intelligence enter. The DNI and the CIA are communicating with text messaging with individuals in the camps of the Venezuelans that I have in Colombia. Right. I secure a contract with Juan Guaido, who is at the time, he is the recognized leader of Venezuela. So I have a hard contract. What I'll say is that there is no way in God's green earth that this man would have signed a contract with me unless he had the approval from the White House. So I want to say it was a month later. He was in the White House shaking hands, and this was the State of the Union, I believe. And so the CIA, all the way through, was privy to this entire operation. I, at the time, did not know this was a Civil War style, spy versus spy thing going on with Pompeo aligned with the CIA going after Trump administration. And I do believe the CIA had multiple targets. I do believe that Trump was probably the main target. The other was to protect the regime and make sure that the US AID money was flowing freely. The operation in and of itself was leaked to largely CIA sourced, largely Venezuelan opposition sourced to the AP, and this was I want to say a week before that the operation went forward. The AP, they ran the story, which was largely incorrect, but events leading up to the actual operation in and of itself, I was caught between a rock and a hard place, and I had to move forward simply because the ELN, my camps of men were on the border at the time. The ELN was essentially alerted to our existence, and they were pushing in towards us. This put us in a very dangerous position. And so I chose to move the operation forward simply because to move backwards would have been moving into the ELN. And it was really the only option. I had two terrible options, and I picked the lesser of two evils. The operation goes forward. There are GPS devices in the boats. And so Maduro, look, he didn't really have to do much. The damage was done by the individuals who were the CIA assets who were sending messaging to the DNI. My men were found, they were caught, captured. 8 of my Venezuelans were killed, and then I believe the CIA got the fallout that they wanted. And this obviously embarrassed the Trump administration. There were ties from me to the Trump administration, and I know that there were, a lot of denials, but at this point, it's undeniable that I had, there were individuals in the government that were very close to the Trump administration who were helping me facilitate this op. I read
What
about it.
was the op specifically going to do? You and your men. Can you maybe militarily just explain to our audience what that was going to look like?
Yeah, it was really an op within an op. What everybody was watching was, these camps with these Venezuelan dissident or well, Venezuelan patriots who were essentially going to go in and try to get Maduro. But the reality is the op was a link up. So I had developed several powerful Venezuelan assets that had access and placement to Nicolas Maduro and Diosdado and Tariq at the time. It was really the triumvirate of these three guys who were in charge of Venezuela. I had ops tested them over the course of a year, and so we were ready to go. And furthermore, what really, you know threw these guys into my not I mean, what motivated these assets in Venezuela was the fact that much like now, the saber rattling was intense. I mean, we were doing everything we could to flip Venezuela, economically, sanctions. We were J-damming Iranians, and so these individuals in Venezuela were terrified that they were going to be on the wrong side of this. They were convinced that America was going to flip Venezuela and liberate it. And so it wasn't that big an ask for me um, to gain access to these individuals because they wanted to remove Maduro. That said, these individuals had task and maneuver units. So I was going to essentially link up with my civilian boat into a civilian marina. The two military style boats would have moved further down the coast. They would have made landfall and executed low level military operations. I didn't want them to skirmish against, Venezuelan regulars. The civilian boats would have essentially linked up with these assets, and this would have essentially sparked the military action against Nicolas Maduro, and it would have been a Venezuelan military action. This obviously was thwarted by CIA, and
So
doesn't
you
help.
were going to be working with the Patriots who wanted to overthrow Maduro
Right.
to move towards a democratic process once again in that country. The CIA wanted to stop that and thwart that and got in your way and
Exactly.
alerted. Did the CIA basically undermine and alert Maduro that you guys were coming?
Yeah, so it's interesting the way that this shakes out. When you do a moderate amount of homework, the people in charge at the time, I think it was Rick Grinnell was where was he? He was in DNI, and so he would have been reading the text messaging, and he has a pretty close relationship with Maduro. Um, and so, yes, I believe that this is tied to the entire drug trade that the CIA is. I mean, they're part and parcel of. They started it, so they wanted to protect their obviously their whatever that I mean their asset, which is the drug trade and routes and logistics that are the cartel de las solas. They also wanted to hurt the Trump administration, so I think this is two birds, one stone for them. Obviously, the Trump administration wanted fair and free elections. They didn't quite know how I was going to pull it off, but like I said, I didn't want I can't fight an entire army with fishing 80 guys in fishing boats. So I thought my solution was simple. It was elegant. Use the Venezuelan military to do its own work, and they were willing back then. Nowadays is a different story, simply because of what happened with us back then. It's why would why would the Venezuelan military trust anybody, any U.S. representative? It's just how can they? So, um,
It's unbelievable to me that the CIA was working at cross purposes with the Trump administration. Like this was a Trump administration White House operation. You get called in by the White House and the CIA thwarts it in order to protect their drug trade. It's remarkable to me. I mean, in
well,
your
listen,
world, this is probably normal, but for me, this is shocking.
yeah, this would be there's There's an investigative journalist who's been studying this stuff for the last 9 months, and he's read all the discovery and before everything was redacted and they did, no pun intended. He's poured all over it, and he said to me once, the truest thing that was ever said about this case, which was, "Your story is impossible. Nobody's going to believe it. I believe it because I have seen all of the receipts, and you have never lied to me." And he's right. This is an impossible story. And it's taken me a very long time to wrap my head around it. Back then, when I was operating and trying to solve this problem and trying to get this done, which I do believe was the best possible way of gaining fair and free elections in Venezuela. And that's nuanced.
So, yeah, it's incredibly nuanced. So now, well, the CIA thwarts your operation. It fails. Maduro remains in power. Then what happens? Because now you've lost 8 guys. Number of them were killed. What happens to you? You're indicted. You're at cross purposes with Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence's office. Again, in the White House, the Vice President of the United States. So can you walk me through what happens next to you?
Yeah, it's a lot of lawfare, to be honest. I mean, I fought for this country for 2 decades, and I fought the GWAT. I was a special forces guy, and I mean, I did a lot of the, I did a lot. And so to be betrayed by my country and now to be essentially put on trial for things that the CIA and these other nefarious individuals should be put on trial for and be investigated for, it's disheartening to say the least. Furthermore, there are ties between this prosecution, right? I mean, the lead FBI investigator was part of the Mueller investigation, the Russia collusion hoax. She was part of that, and yet she's prosecuting this case. Furthermore, and this one's really mind blowing. The prosecutor who built the case, he is a man named Patrick Scruggs, and he stabbed the guy 7 times in Tampa, and so he was pulled off of this. Several other prosecutors, they declined the case. Now, the really strange or coincidental piece of information is that this prosecution was initiated by the National Security Council, or whoever it is, all the way up in the Department of Justice. They initiated it. That individual is a man named John Eisenberg. Well, John Eisenberg was appointed by General Flynn and was in the White House the same time that Keith Schiller, the man who recruited me, was in the White House. Obviously, the prosecution was started under the Biden administration 4.5 years later. But at this point, the Trump administration knows full well what is happening in the Middle District of Florida, which happens to be Pam Bondi's district. And quite frankly, it's not doesn't sit well with a lot of Americans.
You are indicted. Where do things stand now? I mean, has the Trump administration, has Pam Bondi moved to try to pardon you or step in to say this was unjust, or is this being swept under the rug?
This is being swept under the rug at this point. I think that my lawyer,
because by publicly pardoning you, it would call attention to this coup attempt.
That is the implication. And so I think there's some very smart people on the left who their timing of the prosecution was right before the run up to the election, and they see this as a ticking time bomb that is getting ready to explode under this administration, which I never wanted. Right? I'm a soldier, and so when the president of the United States, when I am given a tasking, when I am given authorizations to do an operation, I do this to the best of my ability. My men were lost on the battlefield, and as was I. Men were killed. I think that it is, I think that not doing the right thing in this instance would be detrimental to this administration.
And the right thing being what?
I think a full investigation of 4 years ago is fair. I know it's going to implicate certain people on both sides, but that's what I've been waiting for the last, I don't know, this has been going on over a year now. It's obvious reading the discovery that the FBI knew about that the operation was sabotaged 3 weeks before. There were two destroyer groups in the Caribbean at that time, which I requested, by the way. Admiral Fowler was given a call a year prior and advised of this operation. I requested it through my White House cutout, and I mean, all of the evidence to this is staggering. The fact that this has not exploded like a nuclear bomb is confusing. But it's also evidence that the suppression of this story is evidenced by the fact that this investigative journalist, he can't get his story published. And it's been 9 months since he's been working on it. So I don't know what happens now. If we go to trial, it's going to be a really long day for the government. I'm not worried about the trial. The last thing I'm worried about is the trial. I am more worried about the lawfare and the measures that are currently being taken by the prosecutorial team to try to put me back in jail. It's
what are they trying to do specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to get into the nuances of it, but suffice to say that I have not run. The under the Bail Reform Act, they are trying to use the fact that I'm a flight risk because of my special training as a Green Beret. I haven't gone anywhere. I want to go to trial. I want the truth to come out. I know what's in the discovery because I've read it. My lawyers know what's in the discovery because they've read it. It's staggering that this hasn't reached, senators, or it's unbelievable to me. And so I don't fear a trial. I want a trial. The only way they win is to get me in jail, simply because there's a lot of classified information. And so if they put me in jail, the implication for them is that they're just going to keep dragging their feet on classified information. I'll sit in there for years before there's a trial. So I want classified information.
Who's scared? Who's scared of this moving to trial? Who do you think? The CIA? The Trump administration?
I think it's Mike Pompeo. I think it's John Bolton. I think it's Elliot Abrams. I don't think it's the president. I protected the president. They wanted me to meet the president, and I said, "There's no way. Absolutely not. The president needs deniability." I think it's people who are in the president's orbit, who essentially were possibly part of the recruitment process, and some of these individuals are trying to cover this up now. I think it's people on the left who were, people in the CIA at the highest levels who are part of this. I think they're terrified because they know they know what they did. They know it's in the classified information. I mean, I have a White House check-in log, and I had a meeting with several very powerful people in Washington, and 2 hours before this is a sequence of events. If I can drill down. Mm-hmm. I signed the contract with Juan Guaido in Washington, D.C., with a lawyer and several other people, with the opposition president. 2 hours later, I'm in Trump Hotel in D.C., meeting with two very powerful individuals. 3 hours later, there is a White House log with one of these individuals and three guests. This is the level. I mean, I would love to have the White House, or sorry, the White House log with names. I would love to have the camera footage of the Trump Hotel just to corroborate everything I'm saying. I mean, I have it through photos, but this is all, I have a video of the contract signing. I have all the receipts, and the prosecutors know I have all the receipts. The prosecutors know for a fact that it's a crapshoot for them at best. Prosecutors go to trial when they know they're going to win. This goes to trial, they're good luck.
I'm going to lose.
So, well, yeah, but I want the classified, and I want to do it before the people who did all this the statute of limitations runs out, and I want to get on with my life, and the people in my co-defendant wants to get on with her life. So it's, I think somebody has to do the right thing.
So someone needs to come forward. A member of Congress, you believe, needs to hold an investigation, a hearing on this?
I would love that. I am not a politician. But here's the danger of not doing that. I was a soldier my whole life, and you have an administration in a country that is desperately going to need buy-in from soldiers. George Washington once said that, the willingness of the future generations to participate in the next wars, no matter how justified they are, is dependent on whether or on how they treat their veterans. And I got to be honest with you, right now, it's not looking good for the home team. We have wars coming up. I mean, anybody with a mind can see Venezuela, Middle East, Russia. And how are we going to get buy-in from the American people when everything is a conspiracy? The CIA is out doing all these insane things, or this administration's attacking these. I just don't, it's not okay. And I think people are tired of it. They're exhausted, with all this intrigue, insanity. Yeah.
Yeah. We're tired of being played, for sure. Really quick before I let you go, the Mike Pence piece of this. Can you explain the vice president's office involvement in this and his collaboration with the CIA?
Yeah. So the individual who I was meeting with worked directly for Mike Pompeo, or sorry, for Mike Pence. Mike Pence obviously was no friend to the president. And so he was privy to all of this information. Might I just say that Mike Pence's office was desperately trying to find a way, desperately recruiting different projects to try to flip Venezuela at the time. And so he is one of the people that I think should answer for this.
So he was working with the CIA. We know that he's a turncoat, obviously, against the Trump administration, but to be working with the CIA against a White House operation in Venezuela that the White House signed off on and recruited you to carry out.
Precisely. And I mean, I know this sounds, but I have the receipts. I read them every day, as do other people.
Well, we can only hope for an investigation. I mean, we'll do our part here at Redacted to get this in the hands of members of Congress. But beyond that, what do you think is next for Venezuela? What do you think is coming from both maybe the CIA side and the Trump administration? What are we about to see in Venezuela?
The big question is, let's say, whether the CIA, is in line with the Trump administration, and somehow they bring about regime change. Who takes power in Venezuela? That's the big question. What does that look like? Is it a junta? Is it going to be Maria Corina? Is it going to be one of the other individuals in Venezuela? And then what does the subsequent fallout look like? Because the thing about Venezuela is everybody wants to be in charge of Venezuela. So who is going to be whose proxy? Who is the proxy going to be for the entity that actually gets the regime change completed? It's difficult. It's difficult to say. I think these boys have been out there for months doing counter narco operations. It's a crapshoot. I don't know what happens.
So do you think it'll be the CIA that becomes the proxy?
I think that as long as the CIA can protect Maduro, and as long as Maduro persists, they will keep the status quo. Certainly, the CIA wants to maintain the status quo until which time their strategic objective may change. The Trump administration obviously wants regime change. They have not invaded as of yet, so they may invade, but I think more than likely they will try to continue to saber rattle until which time they will basically just capitulate and move the destroyer group back to U.S. naval bases.
Well, Jordan, I'm saddened by your story, and I'm saddened that you'd be hung out to dry by the criminal Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence against your country when the Trump administration was asking you to carry out, a soldier's mission. It's unbelievable what's going on, and I hope that the Trump administration is aware of this sort of deep state operation government at the CIA that's undermining what they're trying to do. I think it's probably pretty clear the same thing was true in 2020 with that election, but you're seeing it in these pieces now with this classified report and what happens to you. I hope that members of Congress are paying attention to this and can get you the justice that you deserve. Any final thoughts, Jordan, on your story or anything we talked about today?
No, I really just, it's been really tough to get the truth out, Clayton. So I just want to say thank you. And you are truly courageous for having me on. Truly.
Well, my pleasure. I hope we can amplify this and get this message out and maybe make the Trump administration aware of what's happening and the undermining that's happening within their intelligence offices as well. Jordan, thank you so much. Where can people learn more about your story if they want to dive more deeply or contact you directly?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. It's Jordan G. Goudreau. There was actually a movie made about this. It's called Men of War. So that's streaming right now. Well, it's not. It's on pay-per-view, but those are the two places.
Jordan, thank you.
Thank you, Clayton.